we have a methodology that we call running the numbers, and we basically just take the business and run it for 50 years as it is. We don't make it worse and we don't make it better. We just say, look, if this is our operating business, if we ran it for 50 years, what would happen? How much waste would we produce? How much energy would we consume? How much, what's the value of the business?
You seem to assign a lot of responsibility to designers. Can you talk a little bit more about your sort of philosophy on why you believe designers have this responsibility and what you think they should ultimately be doing with it?
Well, I think that, for me, it comes from the fact that we have power, and with that power comes a new kind of responsibility. I think that, for most of history, individuals had, and even professionals had a pretty modest ability to affect the world. To kind of shape the world around them and form the planet. But that changed in the last century quite dramatically. And now people, like normal people going to work, are doing things that can really affect the whole planet and affect the ecosystem. And with that capacity, it's an extraordinary capacity, and with that capacity comes responsibility. And it's really what we discovered when we did Massive Change 15 years ago. And it's really what MC24 is all about. It's really about understanding both your power to produce change and your responsibility that comes with it. One of the important roles that designers often play is really to be the voice of ethics and to be the voice of the citizen in a design process. I did a lecture for the Cooper Hewitt on their collection, and Cooper Hewitt's the National Design Museum, part of Smithsonian in New York.
They have that cool pen.
They have an incredible collection of the most diverse possible applications of design. And I tried to think of, I was looking at the collection thinking, what should I do? And I tried to think, what is the common denominator amongst all of this work? Like, what makes it show up in the Cooper Hewitt? And I realized that the common denominator is caring. And we start by caring about the individual experience, the individual user, the citizen. But you can't have a healthy citizen in a toxic community. So we extend that caring to the community around that person. And you can't have a healthy community in a toxic ecology. So we naturally extend our consideration from the citizen to the community to the ecology. And so you hear a lot of designers' voices in the big conversations of our time. And I think that's, for me, that is the great opportunity of our time, and it's also the great challenge.
I like this idea of we always talk about users. I think when you talk about citizens, it scales the importance of it up one notch and makes it feel actually a lot more important than just a user.
Yeah, I think that there is a growing awareness. We saw, when we did Massive Change, we saw a movement, that we called Massive Change, and what we saw really was a global commitment to confront the challenges that we're facing, and the designers everywhere are working on that problem, one way or another. They probably don't kind of claim. Most of them don't claim the kind of grand gesture that we identified in Massive Change, that we are collectively doing this big thing. Most of us are working on kind of our pixel, in this image, and we're trying to make our pixel, as good as we can. Um, but we know that that pixel contributes to a mosaic that is, an incredibly beautiful image of our future. And that, the more that we can advance that, the faster that we can advance it, the more we can scale that, the better the chance we have of getting out of here alive. I think that's one of the big changes that is happening, is that there's a new kind of consciousness about what we're doing. And I try not to assign maliciousness where there's merely incompetence. Like a lot of things, it was just the best we could do at the time,
Yes,
and we're still doing it.
we've always done it that way.
We just haven't, we didn't figure it out back then, and we never stopped to figure it out. So a lot of it is just we hadn't thought about that, and so I don't take a kind of judgmental approach with this kind of work. It's really, working together to understand, where are the opportunities. And when you think about a transparent world, the opportunities are often challenges that are cumulative. And, we look at the numbers, and often the cumulative impact is so staggering that people just are shocked by what they're actually doing, because they're not. We're so focused on quarterly reports and
Yeah.
monthly and daily results, and we don't ever take a step back to say, what happens if we succeed? What if we're wildly successful and a billion people buy this product? What if a billion people buy this product every month? And ideas like that, so that we can start to really understand, what are the implications of the way that we work.
So, I mean, I think a lot of what you're talking about is organizations taking a longer view and thinking into the future. And I suppose one of the ways that we try and help people to ground that is to understand the purpose of the organization. Like, why does it exist? What is it here to ultimately do? How do you help people resolve their kind of purpose, or if they haven't even discovered it, and their brand and their product? Because ultimately, if businesses are not turning over profits, they go out of business. So then, even if they have the loftiest purpose on earth, they're going to have zero impact, because they would have ultimately disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I need people to work with who are really enlightened. I mean, that's the reality of the work I do. And I've been very fortunate to find those people. I worked with Mark Mathieu, who is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurial marketing people I've ever encountered. And Mark's view was, these organizations do not have the right to perpetuity. Right? Like he said, we're not like Dracula, that we can live forever. We have a right to exist if we're contributing. And I think it's such a kind of mind expanding way of thinking about business, to say, you have a responsibility in your existence. And that responsibility is to make the world a better place. Both from a business standpoint and from a social and ecological standpoint. And if you do that, you have a right to exist. But if you're not doing that, you will be punished. And if you think about, how many businesses from the early 20th century are still around, very few. Very few businesses have survived the long term. And you realize, there's a good reason for that, because they were taken out by people who demonstrated a better way of doing something. The whole concept of using design at the core of a business to really drive that process, to be constantly thinking about, how can we do this better? One of the principles is in MC24 is design the platform for constant design. In other words, the old idea that we're going to do a kind of singular object and it's going to last forever, which is still, I think, a kind of mythology in design as a highest ambition. It's nonsense. It's nonsense because the whole world around that object is changing. And the idea that somehow you're going to get it right in perpetuity is just not plausible. And so we really should be thinking about how do we make these things so that we can keep improving them over time, and not get locked into a thing that that doesn't have a future. And so it's really kind of building the long-term perspective into the operating system of the business.